So what I'd like to do first is I'd like to give you an overview of all the standardized tests, and then I'll talk about SAT versus ACT. Okay, and that way you understand the context within which the SAT and ACT should be considered. So overview of standardized tests. So as we talk about private college admission, or we talk about college admission as a whole, private school or public school, okay, there are basically two parts to the admission formula. The first one is academic, and the second one is non-academic. Okay. Now, for the private schools, the academic is about 50% of the formula, and non-academic is about 50% of the formula. For the UCs, it's about 80% academic and 20% non-academic. But the academic and non-academic, they're still the two main parts. Within the academic, you have the GPA and your high school transcript. That's the first thing. And then you have all of the standardized tests. All the standardized tests are APs, SAT, ACT, SAT2, PSAT. And so these tests that are highlighted in yellow, that's what I'm going to focus on right now. And again, afterward, I'll talk about all the different parts of this admission process. So about standardized tests. So what are all of these tests? So you've heard of AP tests or AP classes. AP stands for Advanced Placement. And so AP classes are college level classes. So as a high school student, you're advanced and you're taking college level classes. And so when you complete your AP class, if you take the AP test and you pass, then many colleges will give you credit for that class. So for example, every college in America, whether it's an engineering school or a liberal art college or a UC, every college requires students to take college level English. Okay? Some schools will require 1 year, other schools might require 2 years. During high school, if I complete AP English, there's AP English Language and Literature. If I complete AP English and I get a passing score on the test, 3 or better, many colleges will give me college credit for that class. So if I go to a school that requires 1 year of English, and I have 2 AP classes, English classes, and I get credit for those, maybe I don't have to take any English in college. So AP classes are college level classes, and the AP test is like a final exam in that subject. And if you pass that test, some colleges will give you credit for that class. Okay? SAT2s are lower level than AP. So AP is higher than SAT2. SAT2s are measuring what you learned in a high school level class. So if I take chemistry in 10th grade, and then I take AP chemistry in 11th grade. After 10th grade, after I take high school chemistry, I'm ready for the SAT2. So I can take the SAT2 without taking the AP class. But if I do 1 more year of chemistry at the AP level, that can help me better prepare for the SAT2. So SAT2s do not require any AP level knowledge. SAT2s are measuring only high school level courses. Okay, so that's the difference between SAT2 and AP. PSAT. So the PSAT is basically a lower level practice SAT. Lower level, easier practice SAT. The plan is the easier ACT. Okay, the plan is the easier ACT. So, the PSAT and the plan have no impact on college admission. If you never take the PSAT, you can still get into Harvard without taking the PSAT. But if you do well on the PSAT, then some colleges will give you scholarship for that. Some colleges will give you scholarship for your 11th grade PSAT score. So the PSAT, if you do well, they have something called a National Merit Scholarship. If you are top, I don't know, 5%, I can't remember the exact percentages, but if you're top 5% PSAT score in California, so it's state by state, if you're top 5%, then you will receive National Merit Recognition, okay, commendation. If you're top 1%, then you will be a National Merit semifinalist. And if you're top 10,000 students, then you will become a PSAT National Merit Scholar, finalist. So the cutoff for National Merit finalists last year was about 221. 221 out of 240. So the SAT is worth 2,400 points, 3 subjects, 800, 800, 800. PSAT is worth 240 points, 80, 80, 80. So out of 240, if you get about 222, then you will be a National Merit finalist. Okay? That will not help you get into any schools. That won't help you get into any schools. But USC says, as an example, if you get into USC, if you are accepted by USC, and you are a National Merit finalist, they guarantee minimum half scholarship 4 years. It's not bad, right? Guaranteed half scholarship if you are accepted and you're a National Merit finalist. So there's a lot of scholarship opportunities that you can get if you do well on the PSAT, but the PSAT will not help you and it will not hurt you for college admission. The plan, there's no national scholarship opportunity, but again, it will not help you and it will not hurt you. Now, the main standardized test for college admission is the SAT or the ACT. And I'm going to begin talking about the differences between these two tests. The SAT is a test that measures your ability to apply certain knowledge. Okay? It tests logical thinking skills. Okay? And it tests you in 3 subjects: reading, writing, and math. 800 points each. It's not testing your knowledge, it's testing your ability to apply knowledge. It's testing skills. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute. The ACT is more like a subject test, where it's testing your knowledge, the amount of information that you have about certain subjects. And the ACT has 4 sections: English, math, reading, and science. Each subject is worth 36 points, and they average your 4 scores, and so the ACT total maximum score is 36. Okay? But the key difference to understand here is this. The ACT, because it's a knowledge-based test, a content-based exam, that's what they say. If the ACT has a book that's this thick, and they say, if you know all of this information, then you can do well on our test. Okay? So, but that information is information that you learn over 10 or 11 years. So it's hard to study overnight for the ACT. The SAT, there's no book of information. They're testing your logical thinking skills. Okay, so it's like a logic test, or it's like a puzzle. The SAT is more like a puzzle. But the ACT, if you have enough information, you can do well on the test. The differences between these two tests. Okay, the differences between these two tests. The SAT has 3 subjects, but it has 10 sections. 10 sections. So when you take the SAT, the first section is always an essay. The second section is math or reading. The third one is math, reading, or writing. The fourth one is math, reading, or writing, all the way down till section number 9 is math, reading, or writing, and section 10 is grammar. Okay, so you have 3 math sections, 3 reading sections, 3 writing sections, plus 1 more section. Of those 3, you don't know what it's going to be. There are 10 sections. The ACT has 4 subjects, 4 sections. So 1 section per subject. So there's only 1 math section, and it's longer than the SAT math sections. There's only 1 reading section, and it's longer than the SAT's reading section. As I mentioned in the previous slide, the ACT also has a science section, okay? But it's not like biology, chemistry, and physics. The science section is more like the reading section. So at Flex, we teach ACT classes, and we teach science and reading together. We teach science and reading together. Because in the science section, they give you 1 paragraph of information, and they say, based upon this information, answer these questions about these charts or these graphs. And so you don't need to know physics or chemistry to do the ACT science section. It's really more like a critical reading section, the science section is. But as I mentioned, the ACT has 4 subjects, 1 section per subject. They're almost the same length. SAT is 3 hours and 45 minutes. The ACT is 3 hours and 30 minutes. The SAT, every time you get a question wrong, there's a guessing penalty. You get minus 1/4 of a point. So if there are 10 questions in a section, and I get 6 questions right, and I get 4 questions wrong, for the SAT, each question that I get wrong, 4 questions, I get minus 1/4 of a point. I got 6 questions right, minus 1. So my total score on the SAT is a 5. On the ACT, if I get 6 questions right and I get 4 questions wrong, there's no guessing penalty, therefore I'll still get a 6. So the guessing penalty is actually kind of a big deal, because it can have an impact on your score. As far as the level goes, the reading levels are pretty much the same. As far as the math goes, the SAT goes up to Geometry and Algebra 2. The ACT goes up to Trigonometry. The SAT math is a logic test, total logic test. The ACT math is more like a school math test. And so the math is the area where you really see the biggest difference between the 2 tests. In the SAT grammar, there's no punctuation. ACT grammar has punctuation. And so there are, periods, commas, exclamation points, quotations, punctuation. And so there are some curriculum differences between these 2 tests. And so it's important to be aware of those things because it's a different way to prepare. Essay. The SAT essay is required. Everybody who takes the SAT must do the essay. The ACT essay is optional. So students who don't like writing essays, it's optional. That's the good news. The bad news is every college that you're going to apply for requires that you take it. Okay? So it's not really optional for you. Okay? So, basically it is required, but technically it is optional. So who should take the SAT versus the ACT? We at Flex, we've been doing SAT and ACT for over 10 years now. And generally speaking, this is what I find. And for moms, not just moms, moms, dads, or students who read Korean, on your chair, there should be an article about SAT versus ACT. It's one of our columns, and it's actually in Korean. I wrote the column in English, and then somebody translated it in Korean. So I can't read this, but I can tell you what's in here. Okay, and so there's some case study in here and some information that I'm talking about. But generally speaking, if you are a student who does well in school, if you get high grades and you do well on your SAT-2s and you do well on your AP tests, and you've always done very well in school, and if you are a disciplined, focused student, almost all of those students do well on the ACT. Okay? The ACT is a very good test for that student. Because if you did well in geometry, algebra 2, and trig, then you can do well on the ACT math section. If you can be focused and disciplined in studying grammar, then you can do well on the ACT English section. Reading is a skill that takes years to improve. If you've always done well in school English and you're a good reader, then you can do well in the ACT reading section. Science will be your toughest section, okay, for many of these students. But generally speaking, the students who do well in school, who received a good high school education, those students can do well on the ACT. On the SAT, it's a little bit different. So at Flex, I have a lot of students who take AP English in 10th grade, and they get an A, and they get a 5 on the AP English test, and they love reading novels. They get 800 on the SAT-2 literature test, English literature, but they can't get over 700 on the SAT-1 reading. At Flex, I have students who get 800 on the SAT-2 math, who cannot get over 700 on the SAT-1 math. Because the SAT-1 is a logic test. And if you don't have strong logical reasoning skills, then it's very difficult to do the SAT. So everybody has friends. I have a friend who gets straight A's, and he can't get over 700 on the SAT-1 reading. But my daughter, she doesn't even study, but she got an 800. You know why? Because that student who got an 800 has stronger logical reasoning skills. And no matter how much you study SAT-1, it takes a long time to improve your skills. But it's easier for the ACT to memorize information. So it's two different tests. So who should take the SAT? I hear a lot of parents say, oh, my son, he gets B's and C's. But I think he should be a lawyer because he's such a logical arguer. When he argues with me, he's so logical, right? Like, he's so logical in the way that he argues or in the way that he thinks. I'll call that analytical. Students who are analytical, okay? Those kind of students, even if they don't do well in school, they can do well on the SAT.